Welcome everybody to our second session of the Flourish webinars. My name is Mafe, I'm part of the content team, and I'll be your host today. So this is what we're going to be covering in today's session. It's going to be packed with a lot of demos, examples, and yes, packed with goodness essentially. So as Lisa said, the slides are going to be shared with you. So do not worry if there's something you don't fully grasp at the very beginning, or if you missed a specific step, everything will be available to you by the end of the week. First, we're going to start by showing you the available resources in Flourish on how to cover elections using data visualization instead of at the very end, as you may be used to from previous sessions. And then I'm going to be running two demos. The first one is how to build an elections result map. And the point or the learning points here are going to be how to source and upload custom Geojson files to Flourish to build your own projection maps, and how to add charts to the pop-ups of your map using HTML and CSS, as well as other customizable elements. And the second demo is going to be how to make polling charts with racing lines and normal lines, that is using our line bar pie template, and then adding axis highlights and other customizable elements to the template. And last but certainly not least, product updates and some good things coming your way from Flourish. So as I said, it's going to be a packed session, so let's just get started. So existing resources to cover elections. First thing is to visit our blog. We have loads of template overviews, guides, and a couple of how-to blogs, specifically on the topic of elections. We recently published the 4 metrics to visualize in your elections coverage blog. That was just last week. But we have other documentation as well. Here you can access these. These are interactive cards that once you get the slides, you can simply access through the blog. And we also have one particular blog in Spanish for the Spanish-speaking community in Spain, Latin America, and elsewhere in the world, covering different chart types to visualize elections. Might be particularly useful given all the electoral cycles currently in place. And in addition to the blog, we also have a series of help docs. Not all of these are specific to elections. In fact, only the Parliament chart overview and the elections result chart overview are specific to election data. All the other ones are for different type of customizations you can do to your charts, or different overviews of different templates that can be useful in your elections coverage. And without further ado, actually, no. Let's just give you a quick sneak peek of our latest blog, which you can find here. So this is the 4 metrics to visualize in your elections coverage. And basically, we went over voting intention and polling data. These are the 2 line charts that we're going to be recreating today. A racing line chart and a regular line chart with polling data for the elections in Brazil. For visualizing results, we demonstrated here with a results map, and this is the map that we're going to be recreating today as well, that has custom pop-ups with charts that are being rendered through the data in the data tab in this particular chart. And this results bar that's done again with custom HTML and CSS. We also went over margin of victory, showcasing yet another map that is virtually the same as the one before, but the regions are colored by how lenient a state is on Democrats or Republicans. And that same data can also be represented as an arrow plot, and you can toggle between the different states right here. And last but not least, we're also showing seat distribution and coalitions through Parliament charts and different charts for different bodies. So we have Chamber of Deputies and the Senate in the Italian general elections, as well as general results by party showcased through these results, election results chart, which is a very simple chart, but it has the advantage that through the dropdown, you can either compare different countries or different bodies. So as we're doing here with the Senate and the Chamber, and you can also select or deselect different elements within the chart to see how many parties or conglomeration of parties you would need to gain a majority, which is a very simple yet effective way of telling election results stories. So back to the presentation, let's get started with our first demo, which is the results map. And as I said, we're going to be covering how to upload custom Geojsons, how to create custom pop-ups, and how to create the customs results bar at the very top. So before anything, I just wanted to highlight that our projection map comes with a lot of starting points, as you can see right here. However, we cannot possibly cover every single map in existence in the world, which is why we're giving you the possibility to upload your very own Geojson file. So you can create any map that you want, as long as you have a suitable Geojson file. And where you may find Geojson files, you might be asking. We have our very own set of resources, a repository filled with good Geojson files that have been sourced through reputable data sources on the world. This is a fully interactive map that you can find on our website, and you can download all of the maps available right here. If you do have a map with specific divisions or a particular, I guess, subdivisions for a country or a region, and that you would be keen for us to add here, please contact us through our different channels and resources, and we are going to be more than happy to add it to this repository right here. Or if you're in need for a specific map or a specific subdivision as well, let us know, and we're constantly sourcing different maps and trying to keep this resource as updated as possible and as useful as possible for all of you. But if that being said, if you do not find the map you're looking for in these resources, then, well, you will have to go up to Google and just do a fair bit of research until you can find a suitable file to upload to Flourish. And that is where I'm going to be covering in this first part of the demo. Basically, I'm dividing this demo in sort of 2 or 3 parts. The first part is collecting all the ingredients that we need to build the map. We need first a suitable Geojson file to create the base map, and then we need the actual data that we're going to be plotting into that specific map, which is going to be, in our case, midterm results for the 2018 midterm elections in the US. So the first part of that is to source your very own Geojson file, as I said. Then we're going to be uploading that to Flourish, and we're going to take a look at how that actually looks. Now, part 1 still, the second part of that part, I guess, is to inspect whether your Geojson file is actually suitable for Flourish. And what I mean in this case is specifically size-wise. Flourish is very powerful, however, it does come with its limits, and we recommend that your Geojson files do not exceed 5 megabits. If it exceeds that size, maybe they will load, but they will make the page very slow and laggy, and that will not create a good user experience. Luckily, we have MapShaper, which is a free resource that allows you to simplify Geojson files and optimize them for Flourish. We're going to be doing that in the demo today, and then we're going to be re-uploading it to Flourish. Part 2 is going to be sourcing and finding the data that we're going to be plotting in the map that we just uploaded. These 2 images are not loading here, but basically this is what the data looks, so to speak, in the wild, in the site that we got it from. And then we're going to be merging both the regions file, so the Geojson file, and this data file to create a big data set that contains all the information we are trying to plot. And the last part, it's going to be customizing our map by adding rich pop-ups with the charts that are going to be rendered with the data from our data tab, and the final tweaks, adding all the extra elements. So without further ado, let me just go ahead and jump straight into my demo. So first things first, this is what a Geojson file may look in the wild. If you ever come across such type file and you might be a little bit intimidated by it, don't worry, it can look a bit like gibberish, but effectively what this file is just like a series of little pockets that are each representing a region of your map. And this is going to make more sense in just a second. So to learn how to upload and to simplify your Geojson files, we have this very useful help doc, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So let me just go to Flourish. And actually, I'll just go to a new visualization, starting point, blank, upload my own Geojson. And I'll go to my data tab and upload my data. So I'm going to be plotting the congressional districts for the 116th Congress in the US, which was the Congress in place in 2018 at the time of the elections. And before I upload, I can just take a look at my file size and realize that it's 39.2 megabits, which is way too big for Flourish to handle. So instead of uploading it right away, I'm going to take one step back and I'm going to go back into this help doc, how to simplify Geojson files. Long story short, we need to go to MapShaper and follow the instructions that are very well highlighted here in the help doc. I'm going to go to MapShaper right now. And this is an open source free software, so you don't have any limits as far as I know in terms of data or how much you can parse through it. And it's a really, really good resource. We highly recommend it for anything map-wise. Going to select the file that I want to compress or simplify rather. It's this one. I'm going to take a look at this. All the options look okay. I'm going to import it. This already looks fine. It's my map for the district regions in the US. And now I'm going to click on Simplify. I hit Prevent Shape Removal, which is going to prevent me from deleting any polygons that may be intersected within the map. Apply. And I'm going to get this little settings bar. So the more I toggle this bar to the right, the more simple my polygons are going to be, and eventually they might even lose a recognizable shape. So you want to hit a sweet spot where you can still keep the recognizable features of your region while still making the file quite compressed so you can deal with it in Flourish or other type of software. MapShaper is flagging me that I have 19 line intersections. This basically means that there are some polygons that are causing issues. I simply will click repair and let that be. Generally, that doesn't cause many issues. And I'm quite happy with this. I'm just going to hit export. And I'm going to export it as a Geojson. Export, and I'm going to call this data map. Okay. So if I go back to Flourish, to my empty file, let me just give this a name so I don't get confused. Results map. We're going to upload our data. Data map JSON and open. Import. And here we go. So right off the bat, I can see here a little shadow demonstrated that my file, it's correct in its type. Flourish can recognize it, that the size is actually quite small because that rendered quite quickly, and that it is the US. So everything looks good so far. I'm just going to open one of these elements very quickly to show you how this relates to this very complicated string of numbers that we saw at the very beginning. Effectively, what's happening here is that we are telling the program that these are all the different coordinates to render the different points that will make up the shape of the region. That is effectively what a Geojson file is. Now, if I go to my preview, we can tell that it is the US, but it's not exactly what we're looking for because it's very small and all the way to the top left corner. And that's because it's bound to the world. I need to make the bounds automatic. It's going to snap the vertices of my canvas, and it's disappeared because the projection is not correct. In the case of the US, the Albers USA projection, it's the conventional one to use in mapping. It includes Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. Of course, Hawaii and Alaska are not really down here, but this is just the best way to kind of like cluster all the states and dependencies together. So this already looks quite nice, and we are halfway there in our map. I quickly just wanted to highlight that the particular data source that I used for these congressional districts map did come with extra information. I have, for instance, the name of the representative that won the elections and the party. This is not at all common. Not all the Geojson files that you encounter will have other type of information, which is why we need to use the merging feature. So now that I have my regions right here, it's time to look for my results data for the 2018 midterm elections. And I've selected the Cook Political Report, and they had really good overviews of the elections and the results. I have a column with my districts, the winners, total votes for each of the parties, and the percentages given to each parties, and then the margin of victory, and also some historical data to compare to previous elections. You can download the data right here, and all of these sources are going to be in the slides if you want to take a look at them, practice with them, or just browse them. So after I downloaded and opened my data, I just wanted to highlight that I inspected it, make sure that everything was correct and was exactly what I needed. And I also ran a few bits of data cleaning. I made sure that my districts were in a format that matched the districts in my map. So if I go here, actually, I will have the district ID and a lot of different information. And in order to conduct a merging, I basically need to have a common field that allows me to join both data sets together. So I'm actually going to clear this sheet very quickly, and I'm going to upload a map, this one, that I already had prepared with all the information that I needed for this particular demo. And the only difference between the previous map that I had and this one is that I had added this column of districts. And this is the column that matches the records in my 2018 data sheet, which is this districts column right here. Without this, the merging wouldn't be possible. Effectively, you need to find one column that is common for both. It can come in your data, or you can create it yourself if you have common features. Now, for merging, all I need to do is click on the little toggle here, click Upload Data and Merge, and source for my data. And in this case is this data 2018. Now, Flourish is going to ask me what field do I want to use to merge my data. And I know it's going to be my district column, which is exactly the same on both data sets. Everything looks correct, and I'm going to be merging. Now, if we take a quick look, all columns starting from letter O onwards are from my political cook data set. I have my winner, I have my party, all the votes, percentages, margin of victory, etc. And I also have an extra column with the color of the winning party that we're going to be using for our pop-ups. So now it's time to start plotting our data finally. I'm going to give this a name. It's going to be my district. No labels, because I don't want anything on top of my regions. And the value, it's going to be the winning party, in this case, column K. And I'm going to leave that as it is for now. If I go to my preview, this is already looking quite nicely. Every single one of my districts has been colored by the winning party in that election. And on my pop-ups, I get the district name and the party that won. Now, for the colors, I'm just going to very quickly grab a few colors that I had prepared right here. And I'm going to my regions layer and creating some custom overrides. And we are roughly 70% all the way there. This already looks like a fully a correct political map showing the results. We have a good overview of how many districts the Republican Party won over Democrats and how many are vacant. This is looking quite nicely. And now we just go over to a bit of customization. So the first bit I'm going to do is I'm going to add a group to my map. And groups effectively are just going to create thicker lines or thicker borders in like larger regions of my map to separate them. And I'm going to be doing that for the states. So I get a clearer view of the division within the US. And I now get my regions groups layer options. I'm going to make this a bit thicker, 1, 2. And this is a nice little detail that just makes the map much more readable in terms of splitting the different regions. Now, more bits that I need to do. Basically, it's focusing now on the pop-ups. So to create those great looking charts that are going to be rendered by using specifically these 3 columns, the percentage of votes for each of the parties, I'm going to be following the steps outlined in this help doc. And this is already linked in the slides for you. And we're going to be recreating this example, but with our data. So I'm not going to go over every single step on the help doc, but I am going to basically go over what this code is doing and how you can adapt it to your very own data. So this code has basically 2 parts. The first part is a div that it's rendering the bars, and the second part is the style tag, which is giving the elements within the div different properties so it can render correctly to the different bars look as they're supposed to, and they get the right dimensions, etc. If you do not feel too comfortable dealing with HTML and CSS, I would recommend not tweaking the styles at all, because you might break the pop-ups, and they work quite nicely with the way our pop-ups are rendered by default. If you do feel comfortable, by all means, experiment and take a look at it and see how it works for you. And then by just taking a quick look, we are basically going to be creating list elements for each of the bars, and these are going to be our little bar charts. So I'm just going to copy all of this data. Oop, too much. And I click on something. There we go. So that's there we go. And now I go to my map. And I'm going to go to my pop-ups. So on auto, I'm going to get pop-ups that are generated by the data that I'm parsing through my different binnings or bindings. But then if I go to custom, my pop-ups are going to be completely empty. I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to paste my code. So just by pasting the code, I don't get a lot of information because obviously this code is adapted to the data on the example in the help DOM. And now I'm going to show you how you can adapt it to the data specifically that I have parsed here in the data tab. So let's take a look at this. Let me get rid of this extra space. So first things first, I have a span style here that is going to be given the color to the winning party. So I don't have a winning party column, but I do have a party column, which is my column K. And if you're not familiar with custom pop-ups deal with handlebar syntax. So handlebar syntax basically uses curly quotes, double curly quotes, to call on the different columns that you have in your data sheet. So in theory, for instance, if I wanted to add the name of the winner, and I'm going to be using this one right here, all I need to do is to tap winner, following the exact same spelling that the column headers have in the data tab within the two sets of curly brackets. Now, this is not going to work because not only you need to do this, but you also need to add all of your columns to your meta tab for pop-ups. All the columns you want to render, they need to be here as well. So if I add O and I go back to my preview, I'm going to get the name of the winner as I expected. And I will have to do exactly the same thing for all the elements that I have here within the code, but we'll go step by step. So color winning, I don't have a color winning column, but I do have a winner color. And I just need to do that. Party as well. And I need to bind that. So I need my column O, A, B, and K. Let's see how that's looking. Did I spell that correctly? Let's see. Okay, there we go. That worked. Then moving on, we have the style width and the content. Okay, so every list element is going to be one of the bars. And here, beyond all the classes, I have the name of the party, in this case, Democrat. I have the width, and the width is the bar. And I know that because I have a class of party bar right up here. And this is calling on the specific column that is going to be determining the width of my bars. And in this case, it's going to be the percentage of votes given to the Democrats. So column U, I'm going to be binding that here as well. Because I know I'm going to be using column U, V, and W, I'll just bind all three together at once. Back here. Paste that. And I also noticed that I need to paste it right here because it's exactly the same name. Now, something's happening, but something's not happening here, which is I'm not getting a bar, but I am getting the color correctly attached to my value. And this indicates that I'm pointing to the right column, but I'm missing a step. And I'm going to save you the trouble. The issue here is that the data for this particular map contain percent signs within the columns, but my data doesn't. So to fix this problem, all I need to do is to add a percent sign right next to my column in the width, and it's going to work. And I need to do the same for the actual content. So I get a 50.6% rendered in the text. And I'm going to be following exactly the same process for DOP and the other. Let's see if that works. That's working nicely. And same for other. And I know there's a lot to unpack here, so I'm just going to pause for a second and ask Luisa if there's anything in the chat or anybody that needs to be flagged right now.
So far, so good. We have one question around whether we're going to be updating the congressional districts in our blueprint in the template chooser because they are changing in January. The answer is we would absolutely love to update them, and we will be aiming to do that. And if you happen to have a resource to a place where you know that we might already be able to get those new congressional district Geojson regions, then do share. Oh, we just got another question. Sorry. Do the column names listed in the metadata need to be sorted?
I don't know what they mean by sort. Oh, sorted, not necessarily. Oh, sorry, in the pop-ups. No, I think that template actually is going to do that automatically. If you bind them in a different order, say if I bind column Z before column T, it's going to work, and eventually they will actually be alphabetically sorted automatically by the template. But as long as they're here and you're referencing them in the custom pop-ups, they should work just fine. Okay, well, following that interlude, we are roughly 90% there with this map. We have our custom pop-ups and we're rendering the little charts generated from the data within our data tab. We have covered a lot of ground in terms of the power of custom pop-ups. And this map is looking quite nicely. So a few things that you might want to do now are just further customizations, apply your styles, or just do little tweaks here and there for maybe aesthetic or readability purposes. So we're going to be adding a header. And in this case, Democrats won the House of Representatives this year. So I'm just going to write Democrats take the House and a subtitle. Results for the 2018 midterm elections. And I quite liked center title, so I'm just going to do that. And now for my legend, I could either do this or following, we're going to be doing the custom results bar using HTML and CSS. So I have this code already prepared right here, and we're just going to take a quick look at it. Yes. Okay, so this is how we're going to be rendering the results bar that I showed you earlier. And this is following basically the styles on the custom pop-ups. We're going to be creating 3 classes, or rather 3 spans that are going to be the 3 elements of the bar. So first going to be Democrat, center is going to be other, and the other side is going to be Republican. And we're giving them specific colors, and we're giving them a width that is actually half the size of the total voting turnout. So for instance, say that Democrats got 50%, it would be 25% here, and Democrats got, again, 50%, it would be 25% here. And this is just to make sure that they work well on mobile and that they are displayed correctly on different smaller devices. So I'm just going to copy all of that, and that is going to make sense in just a second. If I go to my text, there we go. And I guess this is also a really nice opportunity to demonstrate that you are able to input CSS and HTML to your header elements, specifically to the text, to create this sort of things, or even custom legends if you want. And because I have this already, I find this legend to be quite redundant, so I'm just going to get rid of it by turning it off. And I'm also going to turn off the search box. And that would be it. We have a finalized results map. with custom pop-ups and our custom bar. And just so I go over that maybe with a little bit more detail, because I do have a little bit of extra time. Let's take a look at this. I'm not going to be able to render this here correctly, but just to go over that a little bit again, party bar class has been predefined in my custom pop-ups. If you analyze that little code and all the information that we uploaded there. The width, again, this is half the value of the total vote turnout for each of the parties. The background color, again, is the color that I assign to each of my parties. And then here, this little D, and D colon 53.4%, it's the text that is being rendered on top of the bar. You can make this text whatever you want. It can be longer, but just be aware that it may not will work very well on mobile. Hence why I'm using the initials, actually. So I will classify that as a success, and I'm going to be moving this. And we're going to be moving on to the second demo. So back into my presentation. A few key takeaways from this first very long, very meaty, filled with goodness demo is how to source and find Geojson files, how to optimize your chart's performance by simplifying Geojson files, how to source elections results data, adding rich pop-ups to our charts, and using custom HTML and CSS to customize our charts. Before moving on to the next one, again, quick question. Is there anything in the chat that I need to be made aware of, or all good?
We have one in the Q&A around using Hebrew when filling the HTML. I already answered it in the chat, but I just wanted to say again, yes, that is absolutely fine. You can just replace the words that are English in our version with Hebrew.
Amazing. Okay, so now we're going on to chart number 2, which should be number 2 and 3, because we're going to be building 2 charts, polling charts with racing line charts and axis highlights on normal charts. So this is what we're going to be demonstrating. Just to flag this data that I'm going to be using, it's before the elections, or the first round of the Brazilian elections took place. So it's not up-to-date data, but it's still good for showing purposes. So yes, we're basically going to be demonstrating how to do this. And the first part, as always, is finding and wrangling our data. So we need to source, inspect, and clean our data. In the particular case of this example, it's interesting because racing line charts need long format data. So instead of all of our date information going into one single column, these are going to be every single one of the columns on our data set, contrary to line charts. And we're going to be seeing that feature in place. And we'll be using the swap rows and columns button within Flourish to fix this data and to make it suitable for the different chart types. Part 2 of this first demo is going to be customizing our chart. So adding images for candidates, setting up different colors, and how to create an autoplay story with the racing charts. So let us just go right here to a brand new visualization, and I'm going to get started with line chart race. Okay, that's great. So let's take a look at the data. So as I mentioned, I have first a column for the date in which a specific poll has been conducted. And I have a column for Bolsonaro, the current president, Lula, who's said to be, well, it's the main candidate that's facing Bolsonaro in the elections, all other candidates, and the percentage of people who are either going to abstain from vote or are undecided. So I'm just going to copy all of this data. Oh, actually, no, that's the first step for the racing line chart. And it's that instead of copying and pasting data, we recommend you actually upload it. And that just basically makes sure that the interpretation of the different columns using data magic, which is one of our latest features on templates, works better. So for me, it was second nature to copy and paste my data, but I remember that it's best practice to not do that. So I'm just passing along that information. And here we go. And when we import, perfect. So as we can see, this is not suitable for this template. I need to have all of these dates as my column headers instead. And I can just achieve that by swapping my rows and columns, clicking this button. And that is all perfect. The template correctly interpreted all my records and they are looking perfect. For my values, I'm just going to bind them all together. I just need to go from B to DQ. And let's take a quick look at this. So a couple of things right out the bat is that my scoring type, I wanted to be scores, not ranks. And my view, I wanted to see the whole thing. Okay. For controls, I just want to hide the scores versus ranks toggle because I'm never going to use that in this case. And for x-axis, okay, so this is a good chance to say that I missed a key step here. So if we take a look at my data, I'm actually starting from the most recent date. So I have data for September here and data for January at the way bottom. Here we go. And here, when I pivot it, actually, I am plotting first the records of September and then the records of January, meaning that this is actually a reverse line chart. It's going backwards in time, and that is not at all what we want. So I'm just going to clear my sheet and re-upload my data. And the quick fix is simply to sort this descendingly. There we go. And again, B, and I think it was DQ, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, perfect. And that looks much better. A couple of things I can fix right out of the bat is my animation duration. If I set it to be 200 seconds, it's much faster, smoother, and I can just see the results quicker. And onwards, it's just a matter of customizing things. So I quite like my lines to be steps rather than normal lines. I like them to be a bit thinner, no shadow behind. And for my colors, I already have my colors prepared here. So I'll just go back at this. And I need them by line. Okay, that is all looking fine. Just editing the circles and making this a bit smaller. Okay. And now I'm going to bring this to the next level by also adding little images that match my candidates. And I can do that by adding a new column to the left and uploading my images. To do this, if you've never done it before, you simply right-click on an empty cell, click Upload File, and I already have my files here. These are PNG images. They have no background, and they're just floating heads for the different candidates. It is important to highlight that you need to make sure that these files are not super heavy so they can render on the chart as well. And I just need to bind them to the correct binding, which is image in this case, my column B. We can see that my value is updated. So I went from being in column B to DQ to being C to DR. So that is all looking quite nicely. And I get my little headers right there. Amazing. And I guess the last thing in terms of the chart that we could do is to customize how the dates look. If this is, I find this to be a little bit cluttered. So you are welcome to, for instance, edit this data and change it to be, for instance, January 2022. So it plots like that. And you can even leave empty records as well. Some people may not like this, they might not think it's good practice, but because racing line charts are more about showcasing the overall like flow of a line, not specific data points in time, I find that it's quite nice to have a very simplified axis that looks a bit sleeker than just having all of this information right here. So I'm actually just going to, oh, I thought I had that prepared already, but I'm just going to highlight the first day of the month very quickly. If I do Feb 22, and so on and so forth. And you can have your data already prepared or cleaned out, so you don't have to do this by hand when you're on the template, but it's really not that lengthy of a process. So, and while I'm doing this, I'll just ask Luisa if there are any other things in the chat that I need to be aware of. So you just don't see me deleting headings for a minute or two.
Yes, we had a question around whether we will be supporting dates and numbers instead of categories in this template. And another person asked, how did you reverse the dates?
So to the one about supporting dates in different formats, I think that's something we can certainly pass along to the product team. What do you think? Because I don't have an immediate answer to that. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely have plans to support it. It's supported in many of our other templates, not yet in the line chart race. This template does support the kind of hinted interpretation of which column is which type, which will make it a lot easier for us to actually add the proper number and date formatting. So we hope to be able to add that very soon. And as Mafe said, we'll be passing that on as a request. I agree,
Yes.
it'd be great.
And about the how I flip the date. So when I inputted my data, I simply sorted. So in this case, it's not going to work, obviously, because this is not numeric, but I can sort it either by descending or ascending order. So I just switch it from newest to oldest, sorry, from newest to oldest to oldest to newest. So backwards. And if that's not working here in Flourish, you can do that in Google Sheets or other spreadsheet format program, because dates are interpreted as numbers, so like they do understand and they are able to sort them from oldest to newest or vice versa. So here, just to finish up the setup of my chart, I'm going to put them in the bottom because I like them here a bit better. And again, this is just stylistic choices. This is completely optional. You can either do it or not do it. Here in particular, I just didn't want a couple of things like the ticks. I find them a bit annoying, or if I reduce the size, I feel like I get a better overview of the full extent. And that's about it. I'm just going to add a quick heading to this. Again, centering that. And what else can I add here? This looks pretty good to me. So now we're going to turn this into a story. And this is going to be called Line Chart Race Brazil 1. I'm going to create a story with this. If you're not familiar with Flourish stories, these are our way to bind different visualizations together in sort of a presentation mode, but it can have different use cases as the one I'm going to be showing right now, which is to create an auto-playing story. That means that the story will play on its own and it will loop if you set it to do so. So you have basically an ongoing animated chart that never ends. And this can replace a GIF if your GIFs are not super high quality, or if you simply want your charts to play on load for when a user reaches a certain point on a page. So we can see that when it reaches the end, my chart doesn't loop. This doesn't happen with all charts. I think the bar chart race has a looping feature that allows it to kind of like start again on its own accord. This is not yet the case in line chart race, but we are able to sort of hack this with this trick that I'm going to be showing you. So I'm going to open my chart again, and I'm going to create a duplicate of it. This is going to be number 2. Grand. And I'm going to go to animations, and I'm going to set the animation to last 0 seconds and my mode to last 0 seconds as well. And when I go here, I'm just going to quickly give this a name. I'm going to add a new slide, visualization, line chart race Brazil 2. I'm going to get rid of the animation because I want this to look like it's a normal chart. None. I'm going to autoplay the story. And when I click autoplay story, it's going to ask me for a specific duration of each of the slides that I have here. So in this case, the duration for this chart should match the duration for your animation. I think mine is around 10 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm just going to take 10. And now the key to make this sort of like autoplay looping hack, it's to make sure that the second one, which I actually mistakenly ticked as 10, should be 0.1. The first one is going to be roughly, yeah, like 10 seconds. And the second one, 0.1. I'm going to take play and load loop story. And I'm going to quickly publish and export this so we can see the final result here. So my line is going to, my racing line is going to go on its own accord for 10 seconds, which is the duration that I gave it. And yes, so that was a very, very tiny one because I gave it less time than it should. Probably should given it maybe 20 seconds even. Point is that when it reaches a certain point, it's going to restart, which is something that the current template doesn't do on its own. So just to test that, if I republish that and I refresh, let's see what happens. We're going to be racing all the way through 20 seconds. Hopefully they will reach the end. Yes, so roughly you get the idea. Obviously you can time your own chart and see what's the exact duration of it, or you can make this slide last a bit longer if you want to have a bit of a transition in there. I can give it maybe like a second, perhaps 0.1 was too harsh. And the effect that you will get is just this ongoing looping story that doesn't actually look like a story because I removed all the animations. It looks like an auto-playing chart. So that's been it for the racing line chart. Now we're going on to the normal bar chart, which is going to contain exactly the same data, but I'm going to highlight different features that are available on our line bar pie. So we're going to take a look at setting custom colors, which we just did, which is adding different colors to different candidates, adding legend colors to our headings, and axis highlights. So back on here, I'm just going to create a new visualization. Going to open the line chart. And I'm going back to my data. So contrary to the racing line chart, I won't need to do any sort of transposing here because this matches exactly the data type that this template requires. I'm just going to paste it and we can see how that already looks correct. I don't have to do any sort of changes in here. This all looks perfectly adequate to me. And just a few things to get started with. I am creating steps. I'm making this lines a little bit thinner. There we go. Grand. And I'm changing the colors following these colors right here. Okay, so that first part is already done. And now I'm going to be adding percentages to the axes because this is showing percent. So number and date formatting, suffix, percent. Another thing that we cannot do with line chart race, but we can with the chart with a normal line chart, is to add date formatting. So I'm just going to input the formatting which my dates are inputted, which is year, month, day with dashes, and the display format. I want my date to show as a month and a full year. So my ticks are just a little bit sleeker and they look much better. On the x-axis, I'm going to give comment text. Styling. Oh gosh, there we go. Text to show, my mode is going to be custom. Oh, actually no, auto works more than fine. And then my maximum date is going to be this one. Perfect. And my minimum date, it's going to be the first date in my set. And again, these are just few stylistic choices. You can make them as you please and to suit your own style or your newsrooms or company style. More things to customize this chart with is going to be the header. Again, it's going to be Lula leads polls. And as a subtitle, this might not be enough to upset Bolsonaro, the incumbent. Now, inline charts and also in other templates, we are able to sort of transpose the color on our legends to our heading elements. And this we can do by going to legend, all the way to the bottom, and add data colors to header text. If I tick auto, anything that matches the headings in my column, it's going to be colored by the same shade as I have in my legend. So here we can say that Bolsonaro is dark blue, and because I typed the name in my subheading, it's picking up the same shade. And same for Lula with the heading. This can be very useful if you want to get rid of your legend, or if you think this is redundant, or if, for instance, the others and the absent undecided are really not adding that much information to your chart, and the legend is just an additional element that you want to get rid of. You could easily use these this feature, which is very sleek, and I personally like very, very much. And it just creates a much clearer and cleaner view of the chart. And the last thing that we're going to be doing here is adding axis highlights through the annotations section of our settings panel to give a bit more context and information on what's going on in the chart, and perhaps help explain why on some points there were some close-ups between the two candidates, or when did they started to like divide within the polls. And again, I have this data pre-selected and pre-processed. So it's here. And we need to go to axis highlights, one per line. And in this particular case, and we're going to be changing this in just a second, I'm highlighting when was the second debate, when was the first debate, and when did Lula launch the first candidacy, because Bolsonaro, being the current president, didn't have to do so. So this is relevant information. Now, you may notice that even though my axis is rendering the dates with as month and then year, I still have to input the date here where I want the mark to be on in the old format. And this is important. If I use, for instance, August 2022, this is not going to work. So you need to use the same format as it is in your data tab. And now I can just, my line width is going to be 1.5, making them a bit thinner and making my dashes a bit longer. And I can change the position of my labels. I want it to be horizontal, perhaps a bit bigger, and position. There we go. And I think that doesn't really work fully, right? So I can see that this is an issue, and I can just change that by changing what's the maximum date in my set. Maybe I can set this to be the 20th of September to give it a bit more room, even further than that. There we go. And now I have a fully customized line chart with axis highlights with annotations, customized ticks, and header elements with colors of the legend and customized colors in my lines. So that concludes the second demo for this session, in which we learn, sorry, I was going to demonstrate how to use scraping tools to access data, but that didn't happen and I forgot to update. Apologies for that. But we did learn how to customize charts by adding elements like images, custom colors, and colors to the header, and how annotating charts give more context to our data and how to do so. That is the end of this webinar. I appreciate that it has been a very, very long one, and we're actually almost out of time. I just want to say that feel free to reach out if there are any specific questions you have about the webinars to flourish-webinar@canva.com. And if you have any other questions or requests for Flourish or on the Flourish side, you can reach out to us at hello@flourish.studio. That has been me for today. I believe Louise is going to share some updates with you, so I'll just pass it on to her.
Thank you, Mafe. That was such an awesome session. We love an in-depth demo where we learn all the tips and tricks of the insiders. So that was very useful. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just going to take you through a few updates around what's new in Flourish and what to expect in the coming weeks and months. Before I do that, though, I just included a few really cool elections examples that we've seen created by other Flourish users, other newsrooms that use Flourish, that I just wanted to highlight to give you a little bit of inspiration. For example, we see this awesome Sankey here where we can see the flow between different parties kind of before and after an election. And on the right-hand side, we can see a marker map, which was used to show the swing and how big that swing was to a specific party. So this is a really clever way of using our marker map where the icons are input as images and then sized according to a value. And then included two more examples. One of these is a 3D map with very nice custom pop-ups. This is also all achieved with custom HTML. So you can really create full layouts in your own styles. And on the right, we have a bar chart race that is showing the voting preference over time since 1923 by the Irish Times. So that's just some more examples. And then in terms of what's new on the Flourish side, we have a couple of updates on the platform. One of them is that enterprise customers that have SSO enabled in their company can now actually click log in with SSO rather than having to come from their SSO provider. So that will make things a lot simpler. And another update is that you can go into your profile settings now and create a public profile page. You might want to do this if you want to use your profile page as a portfolio to show all your published projects that you've created with Flourish. And we've included the link to the changelog in that slide as well, where you can always stay up to date with what's happening in Flourish. We've also been busy on the content team creating new blog posts. We had 3 since our last webinar come out. One of them is around why data storytelling is important for your business and kind of when to ditch dashboards and go for storytelling. Then the topic of our last webinar was 5 data viz mistakes that you're probably making and how to fix them. We also have a blog post to accompany that. And we have one to accompany today's webinar where you can find all the examples that Mafe demoed along with many more in our latest blog post. These will also be all linked in the slides. And then finally, to end on a very exciting note, we have a new template that will be available to all of our users coming very, very soon, just in time for the midterm elections, which is this beautiful gauge visualization that you might or have already seen in other news outlets like the New York Times or Politico, who use this to kind of show how likely it is to go in one or another direction. And you'll be able to create single gauges or grids of gauges for different areas. And yeah, stay tuned. We hope to have that with you as soon as possible. And that will be available to everyone as well. So that is it from us. We will hang around for a few more minutes to see if there's anything that came up in the questions. But I will already say thank you so much for joining us and wish you a lovely day and see you next time for our next webinar.